Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Ted, hanging out with
Dave.
And today we got a video that was inspired by something I read over on the Tabletop one-shot group. It's a Facebook group, and that was it's best if the DM is a player as well.
Guys, jump down in the description where you can find Nerdarchy, the newsletter, where you can get weekly gaming tips as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
So when it comes to GM, some groups literally just have a GM that has a person that constantly GMs. They enjoy running the stories. They don't have a problem doing it, but they never flip the table. They never get to be a player. And this discussion, the guy said, well, I had been running as a GM, and it wasn't until I took a break, let somebody else DM, that I realized that there's things that as a player I like doing that I wasn't providing as a player, or I wasn't providing as a GM. It got me to realize what my favorite table size is. So what is your take on that? I know in our group we're both DM and players and have been for many years.
Yeah, I mean, more recently we've gone to the
multi-story angle, I guess you could say.
Well, it's not so much multi-stories, but multi-DM, where we consistently have 3 DMs running different games. We don't play those games as often, but the DMs get more of a break, and they don't get burned out as much. And I think it is good from that angle of, if you're not the only DM and you're playing as well, you do get to experience other gaming styles and other GMs, and you might see things that they do that you like or don't like, things to incorporate or things to change in your game. It definitely is going to give you a different dynamic and a different experience. In our case, where we have multiple DMs running at the same time, I think it's even better. I mean, if you only have one person to compare with, it doesn't give you as a diverse point of view.
I would agree,
and especially if, like, a lot of times in a gaming group, a lot of the gamers in that group are very similar in their tastes. I mean, that's why they game together, especially if they've been together for a long time.
And not only are we doing multiple games, but we're also running multiple systems. And it's very easy, especially in D&D, or D&D 5th edition, to be able to say, okay, well, how can I incorporate this odd mechanic or thing that is really neat into this particular style?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're just starting to branch out now, more so than we have in the past. I mean, we recently played the Star Wars game with the narrative dice, which was completely different, which was a lot of fun. We're getting ready to run Cypher System based off of the Shadowrun campaign world, which is new to us, and it's another really rules light kind of system. We've run Scott's run Fate Accelerated for us.
I would like to revisit the Fate system and actually do a campaign, as opposed to like the 2.5 hour one shot that we got for me to get a real feel of that system. I think it'd be very, very beneficial for us.
Well, maybe maybe after Scott runs his 2 sessions of this game, we'll jump in on that.
I don't think it's going to be 2 sessions. I think he's actually looking at a more protracted arc, which for him is 7.
Yeah.
But even if we get a 5 to 7 month story arc on Shadowrun in the Cypher system, we can go that direction.
Yeah, we can jump off. Yeah, so there's all these different things as a GM that can give you different perspectives on how you run your game, how to improve your game, and how to change it up. Because it really is easy to get set in your ways and kind of just do the same thing over and over again.
I agree. I've learned a lot, not only by doing what we do for Nerdarchy, but it's forced me to try and say, okay, what can I do to improve myself as a DM? And as a player, I'm like, okay, well, I seek this, I look for that, so how can I make those things happen for my players as a GM? But also reaching out. I've played Dungeon World, and we talked about Star Wars, and throughout these things that I've been doing, I've picked up things and I'm like, all right, I like this concept. I want to put it into my game. And back in the day, I never would have said, okay, well, once a party has gone through an encounter that they've successfully beat without too much drain on their systems, I never would have said, okay, well, you guys, and just storyboard, you encounter several more encounters like this, and you manage to squash them.
Because, well, at the end of the day, certain things just don't really add to the story at any point. It's like it becomes an exercise in rolling dice. Mm-hmm. And if it's going to be the same kind of encounter, it's not...
It doesn't add to the value.
It's not going to be any more interesting than the first time you did it. But if you want to emphasize, like, this is kind of what's going on, and this is what the area you're in, that, yeah, these things keep popping up, and you can kind of just look and see what the resource strain was from the initial encounters and the GM and decide, yeah, you guys can kind of bulldoze those through these.
I didn't even feel like, while yes, there was definitely damage, and resource drain on the party, I didn't feel it was adequate enough to actually impose any kind of penalty on the party. Like, it was not important enough to actually say, okay, all of you take 3 more points of damage. It wasn't necessary. I just said you encounter several more groups.
It was the montage,
right? And it's like, okay, you went through this to give the players the feel that that's happened. My exposure to Star Wars has allowed me to say, okay, well, in Star Wars, if the party splits, you're allowed to, if you're not there, you're allowed to say, okay, well, I'm going to take control over this NPC for this scene.
Right. Well, that's not a Star Wars thing. That was just something Scott did on a whim.
Oh, I thought that was...
No, it's not part of the system. No, he made it up.
Wow. Well, it was something that I got exposed to, and just so happens that was something that came up in my last session that I ran. And Scott's like, oh, well, can I do this? And I was like, why not?
And it's great. Like, for this instance, when this one player party member decided he was going to go off and do this thing that his character felt was important, and some of you guys may have watched the video already, and in the meantime, instead of us all watching him do something or him watch us do something the whole time, he just grabbed an NPC out of the back of the monster manual and said, can I insert this NPC into the game? And sure, why not? Like, it doesn't hurt anything. He gets to participate, and we're not down a man per se.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting.
It was interesting. Scott got to play a different type of character, but he did what I, as a player, had done in the Star Wars game. It's like, oh, well, let's look through the NPCs that might be available in this position, and he grabbed a veteran and said, okay, well, he would be at the wall. Maybe he's curious enough to know what's going on,
or wants to help, or whatever.
Whatever. So,
but the key point is the fact that, like, that came about because you played in someone else's game as a player as opposed to the DM. Now, I want to say the other thing that I find can be a little frustrating and difficult, when you're switching roles is, as the DM, like, it's hard to not, like, it's hard to not armchair quarterback, the DMing, like, oh, I wouldn't do it that way, or that's not working, or and letting yourself just go and be like, all right, now let me enjoy the way this person runs their game instead of trying to critique and judge how they're doing it.
I've never had the problem at at the table where I'm willing to be like, where I'm willing to stand up and just yell at the DM. But I feel after the session is over, you can always, and typically you're gaming with friends, or at least I am, I'm always willing to talk to the DM and say, hey, in this situation, had you considered this? Or, I felt that was a little harsh, and he or she might change their mind, or be like, no, dude, sorry, this is, once it's done, it's done. I don't go back and change things. So right. There's always ways to address that situation. And if your DM that you have an issue with is your friend, perhaps he doesn't.
Well, I don't even mean in a way of having an issue. I just mean they do it different than you, and you're automatically, as someone who runs the game, going to go. It's hard to turn off your GM brain and be like, and ignore the things that are different than the way you would do them.
That's true.
And just experience them. I'm not in no terms do I mean like jumping up at the table and be like, how could you do it that way? I mean, other than it being very rude and ignorant and being an asshole. It doesn't really serve a purpose, and it breaks up. Yeah, it breaks up the game. But I'm just saying, like that's like, to me, the downside is like, I wouldn't do it that way. Or
yes, there are those type of moments, but I think that the pros definitely outweigh the cons.
Oh, sure. And it also, like, when you talked about adding new things from other games that we've done into it, like, I've also seen that backfire a little bit in our games. You know, like in the last session you ran, when you had an idea of how something would work, and so you were going to give the reins over to the player, but the player clearly did not agree with you, and so, like, you wanted to give him autonomy and player agency, but within guidelines, and he didn't want to stay between the lines,
right?
Because he didn't feel his character would do that, and then you're like, oh crap, I didn't really come up with a mechanic for this, and so, like, that's also an example of how it can go awry a little bit. I mean, it was a little hiccup. You've been DMing for a while and kind of just, went with it.
I went with it. I found a way to make it work. Everything technically still happened the way I wanted it to. So, it is what it is. And all that's in the gameplay session. So
yeah, which you guys can check out. What else? What else do we got here? I think that pretty much covers it. Like, basically, what are the benefits of playing in the game if you're always the DM? That's what we're getting at, right?
Yeah.
So you guys, what has your experience been? I know a lot of you guys, unfortunately, never get to play and always get stuck DMing. And I feel I was there for years. I feel like, but hopefully some of your players will step up and help you out at some point.
It took many years for Dave to fully say, "All right, Ted, it's your turn."
Somebody's turn. I don't care. I'm gonna put Domo in the chair.
We didn't have Domo back then.
Curses. That's why it took so long. I didn't have Domo. But I don't know. You guys, what have you learned as GMs by being the players? Let us know in the comments below, or at like, share, and describe.
You can head over to nerdarchy.com and check out all the cool articles there.
Until next time,
stay nerdy.